Pokemon Masters, my name is Birdkeeper Toby, thank you for clicking on my video, and what if Magerna was good? Like, really good? What if I was a creative at Game Freak at the time of Sun and Moon's creation, and actually X and Y as well? Because yeah, the implementation of mythical Pokemon hasn't really been the same since Generation 4, Generation 5. Nowadays, we just get a serial code and we download it, or we get a QR code in the case of Magerna, which we scan, and we get gifted it by some guy in a shop in Alola. I don't know about you, but I feel like mythical Pokemon should have more of a story, a myth around them. And sometimes alternate forms of mythical Pokemon, like the original color version of Magerna, just get forgotten about and then added to Pokemon Home as an afterthought. Yeah, okay, no thank you. For as much as I love Pokemon, I love critiquing and I love being a creative myself. I'm wondering, how would I write those things in if I had the ability to do anything I wanted? So thank you for clicking on this video. Do get creative with me in the comments. How do you think Magerna and the other mythical Pokemon I'm going to talk about today should really be integrated into the story? What would you do if you were a creative at Game Freak? So Magerna was the first Generation 7 Pokemon ever revealed. This was an exciting time for Pokemon, because at this point, we were still expecting Pokemon Z. This was right after I had started making YouTube videos. Magerna, as well as containing the Soul Heart, it also contained the hopes and dreams of a lot of Pokemon fans moving forward. Pokemon was now in 3D and X and Y. Where was the story gonna go with Pokemon Z? Which of course we never got. And if Magerna was a Pokemon representing the new generation, alongside a movie with Volcanion, how was it, and then the new perfect form of Zygarde, how were they all going to tie together to make some really cool and epic story? Well, once we got the announcement of Pokemon Sun and Moon, I thought I knew. I had seen the Tapu Pokemon, these part fairy type Island Guardians, and well, I was pretty sure how they'd fit into the picture. Imagine me there in the Game Freak offices with Junichi Masuda himself. And Masuda's like, look, we've got these 4 islands of Alola and 4 island guardians. Yep, that sounds great, I like that. They're all part fairy type and they can all do this thing where they kind of withdraw into their shell to create another bit of imagery. Okay, cool, I see where you're going. And then we've got this 5th island of Alola. It's an artificial island, man-made. Okay, right, and then Magerna is... Yes, Magerna is a part fairy type Pokemon that's able to withdraw in on itself into like a little shell and look like a giant Pokeball. Oh, so Magerna is the 5th Island Guardian for the Aether Foundation. That makes so much sense. What? No, dude, what are you talking about? No, that's not what we had in mind at all. Sorry, wait, what? No, we were just gonna have Magerna scannable through a QR code. We weren't gonna add any story. What? Magerna is clearly the 5th Island Guardian for the 5th Island, the artificial island. It's an artificial Pokemon, it's part fairy type, it can do the thing where it withdraws it. Please, Game Freak, why? Why do you tease me like this? Okay, no. This is how I write it into the story. You're done with Pokemon Sun and Moon, okay? You beat Lusamine at the end, she's gone nuts, Lily's gone off to the Kanto region, and you're rolling around catching those legendary Pokemon, specifically the Island Guardians. You get done catching all 4 and you get a message from Lily. She's from Kanto, things are going well, she's looking after Lusamine, who's chilled down a lot since the end of the game. They've been reminiscing about Lily's childhood together, and she thinks, given that you've gained mastery over all the Island Guardians, that actually there might be something you could do to help her out. See, back at the Aether Foundation, at the Aether Paradise where she was born and raised, she remembered that she used to play with a Pokemon in the Paradise, a man-made Pokemon. One day it just disappeared and Lusamine reveals that's just because it ran out of power, but it's a real Pokemon and it still needs to be taken care of. Perhaps you're the person to do it, and enclosed in the letter is a little key that's going to allow you to access a new area of the Aether Paradise. Heck, if you want, in the letter, Lily can even mention she's been thinking about this, not just because of her childhood, but also because in Kanto there's been reports of a new Mekl Pokemon that's a legendary. Because this is foreshadowing, because Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, because Meltan and Melmetal, the next mythicals coming out. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's just a little bit of flavor text. This key, it allows you to access new areas of the Aether Paradise. And one of the things I really loved about Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon was that whole Team Rainbow Rocket arc, where you got to explore and snoop around the Aether Foundation. Let's give some foreshadowing and nods to that, you know? So you start snooping around the Aether Foundation, looking for this mysterious Pokemon. Of course, along the way, you're battling people like Faber, and maybe you meet Wick for the first time, because in Sun and Moon, Wick was not in Sun and Moon, she's only in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Maybe Colress is around, I don't know. The point is, all of these people of the Aether Foundation, they're not super fond with you snooping around. You're definitely going to get into some battles with some of them, and eventually you're going to bump into Gladion. Gladion has taken over the Aether Paradise, and of course he has his own man-made artificial Pokemon, that being Silvally, who he's going to say, look, I don't like you going in my sister's room, I don't like that you're snooping around here exploring, the Aether Paradise is done with shady stuff, and you being here kind of causes a little bit of a problem for me. Just a little bit of kind of like contrived drama to make you fight. And ultimately you have your best battle with Gladion yet. But of course, you're the protagonist of the game, you win, and you enter Lily's room or the attic or wherever it is, and you find Magerna. But Magerna is deactivated. You can add it to your party, you can send it to your box, but you can't send it into battle. It just isn't operating properly. It's clearly a Pokemon, but there is this artificial element to it. And Gladion's like, actually, you know what? I remember this Pokemon. Yeah, it's an artificial Pokemon, much like Type Null and Silvally. He'll talk about, as he's been caring for Silvally, he's been learning a lot about artificial Pokemon, and he actually remembers that there was an artificial Pokemon in Kalos that had a supernatural organ. And maybe if you go and visit Dexio and Cena in the Alola region, they might be able to give you a little bit more information. And you go and see Dexio and Cena in their little makeshift base, and of course you have a battle with them, but sure, why not? I guess to see if you're really worthy of the information you have, and once you beat them and of course prove that you are, they're gonna say that there's this story of these old heroes from Kalos. And they're gonna ask you a very important question. Do you need to be told the story, or do you already know it? If you inform Dexio and Cena that you need to be told the story, then they'll fill you in on what I'm about to tell you. And then at the end, they'll give you the Soul Heart, which is an item that will be able to restore Magerna to a regular working state, and well done, that's the side quest over. That in itself, I think, is interesting enough as a post-game event. But if you tell them that you already know the story, then they're gonna ask you to scan a QR code with your DS. Because, you know, I do like the idea of scanning QR codes, just only if they're gonna activate something that's a little bit more interesting. And the only way you'll be able to access this unique QR code is by completing a certain part of the post-game in Pokemon X and Y, where the story that they would have otherwise told you about, you will have already lived it in the post-game of X and Y. But for that, because I'm including two separate games here, and I'm going to pass you on to my good friend HoopsandHipHop, who's going to tell you about the Pokemon X and Y post-game story and the amazing Pokemon Volcanion.
What's up everybody, and thanks for having me on, Toby. So yeah, Toby and I have decided to do kind of a little crossover event with these two Pokemon, and what I am about to tell you is the Volcanion side of the story. So in X and Y, you can learn a little bit about Volcanion from NPCs normally, but in this scenario, if you have Zygarde in your party, these same people will tell you about how the blackouts that were plaguing Lumio City earlier in the game have actually started up again, and you look like the kind of trainer with Zygarde in your party that looks like they might be able to bring some order back to the region. These NPCs would then suggest taking a look at the power plant as a possible source for the blackouts, and the power plant, as you may know, is one of the places where you encounter Team Flare in X and Y. And Team Flare, in terms of having a relationship with Volcanion, just makes a lot of sense because they both have themes that just fit really well together. Anyway, once you reach the power plant, you will find out that Xerosic actually has already captured Volcanion at an earlier point in the game and stored it in the power plant, which is what caused the blackouts originally in Lumio City once Volcanion started to get upset and retaliate. As you begin to make your way through the power plant, battling all the various grunts and admins you're going to find there, you will eventually find out that Xerosic is actually planning to use Volcanion as a way to sort of clear through the rubble in Geosenge Town that was left there after the ultimate weapon went off earlier in the game, to see if he can find out anything about what happened to Lysander after that happened, since in the game itself we really don't find out whether or not he made it out of that mess alive. Xerosic will end up making his escape from the power plant, however, but he will leave some notes behind talking about Volcanion and how at one point it was just a regular Pokemon that has since been enhanced by Team Flare as a part of one of their many experiments. And during the process of enhancing Volcanion, Team Flare also did research on other artificial Pokemon, and this research led them to Magerna and the Soul Heart. They found out that the soul heart is basically crystallized infinity energy, which has since been tweaked by science to allow Magerna to use it as a source of life, which in turn is how Lysander started to learn more about Xerneas and Yveltal, since they are also heavily tied into the concept of infinity energy, and this is why he decided to start to pursue them, which then in turn started to put into motion the events of Pokemon X and Y. After making this discovery, you track down Xerosic in Geosench Town, where, amongst all of the rubble of the Ultimate Weapon and Team Flare's secret laboratory, he has found another Soul Heart which he previously created, and now plans to use on Volcanion to enhance it even further and avenge Team Flare once and for all. However, you of course stop them in battle, and this is where Dexio and Sina show up. They mentioned that they are set to do some traveling in the near future, and could actually take the Soul Heart off of your hands and find a new home for it where it can be used properly, which would foreshadow their future role in the Alola games. They then take the Soul Heart off your hands, and Volcanion flees back to the power plant, where you can then go and catch it afterwards as a reward for completing this quest. The other reward you'll also get is a QR code that, when scanned with a DS with a copy of Pokemon Sun and Moon in it, at the point in the game that Toby mentioned earlier, will actually cause Dexio and Sina to do something a little bit different than they would typically do in that scenario.
Thanks, Hoops. So, as I said earlier, you've now got access to this special QR code at the end of X and Y, and you're able to scan it with your DS somehow. Maybe you need multiple DS? I hope not. Anyway, you scan it, and of course Dexio and Sina are like, oh, you already know the legend, that's really cool. And much like before, if they had to tell you the story, you get the Soul Heart. But this time, Magerna is brought back with some little extra oomph. Its power comes back and it gets a fresh coat of paint, and it becomes the original form of Magerna. So it's like an extra way of adding the original color version of Magerna in as a special bonus for doing some extra work. It makes so much more sense than tacking it onto Pokemon Home as a prize. Anyway, that's my way of including them. And to be honest, Magerna and its original colour form, Volcanion and Perfect Zygarde, these Pokemon were the lost children of Pokemon Z. I'm confident that if there was going to be a Pokemon Z, Magerna would have been a mythical Pokemon within those games, and Volcanion and Magerna would have shared a relationship much like they did in the film. The film where Perfect Zygarde did in fact first appear. And that is how I would put these Pokemon into the worlds of Pokemon X and Y and Pokemon Sun and Moon. And again, that's not entirely based on nothing. Like, I really do think there's a lot of little clues here when it comes to, like, for example, the different island guardians. 5 islands, 1 of them artificial, 4 island guardians, and 1 artificial mythical. Like, I think there's stories there that were intended that ultimately didn't come to fruition. And in fact, that's what we've talked about a whole bunch over on Hoops and Hip Hop's channel. There'll be a link in the top of the description. So if you want a little bit more Pokemon content, I do recommend heading over to Hoops' channel, because that video, he's really done his research. Magerna and Volcanion are by no means the only Pokemon to have suffered this fate of sort of having their stories been trampled over a little bit. Thank you for watching. Please do get creative in the comments. Thank you for liking the video and all that wonderful jazz. I do hope that wherever you are, you're keeping well. And of course, soar high, Pokemon Masters.
This is Ash Ketchum. You just watched a video by Birdkeeper Toby. That makes you a Pokemon Master.
And a massive thank you to those of you supporting me on Patreon right now, including the big patron of this month, Gunnar Clovis. Thank you, heroes.